Hi everyone, Aidan here with etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at, and later we'll be showing you how to install, this Curt custom fit Class 3 trailer hitch receiver on our 2018 Honda Odyssey. A hitch is a great way to carry extra stuff with you on your Odyssey. Let's say you're going on a road trip, you got the van full up with the kids, and you need a place to put everyone's stuff. You could add something like a cargo carrier or maybe like a bike rack to hold you and your family's bikes. My point is, though, with this Class 3 hitch, it's going to be the most versatile. It's a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, which is going to be just the best option for a wide range of accessory choices, whether it be that cargo carrier or bike rack, or maybe something like a ball mount to tow a small trailer. It's going to have a 3,500-pound gross trailer weight rating. That's how much weight it can pull, and a 525-pound maximum tongue weight. That's the max downward pressure on the end of the receiver tube. So it definitely lends itself more towards hitch-mounted accessories like those cargo carriers and bike racks where you're going to be worried about tongue weight. If you do use it to tow though, just be sure that you check your vehicle and its owner's manual to know what your Odyssey is capable of and go by the lowest rated component so you don't overload either the hitch or your vehicle.
It uses a standard 5/8 inch hitch pin and clip, which aren't included with the hitch,
but you can pick up one here at etrailer or a locking one.
And most accessories will come with something like that, so keep that in mind too based on what you're picking up. And then the safety chain loops on the side here are easy enough to access for both the standard style S-hooks or maybe a slightly larger clevis style. Some measurements to keep in mind here. From the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening is going to be 13.5 inches. And if you are using this with something like a ball mount, that'll let you know what kind of rise or drop you maybe need to have a level towing situation, or with the bike rack, how much of a rise and how high the bike rack's going to sit. And then from the center of the hitch pin hole to the outer edge of the vehicle, that's going to be 4.5 inches. And that'll let you know if you have clearance for folding accessories. So if a cargo carrier folds up when it's not in use, that measurement will tell you if it's going to hit the bumper or not. As far as the installation goes, it's going to be pretty straightforward. This one is more involved than other options available for your Odyssey because it requires you remove the rear fascia. And while that does sound pretty daunting, it's actually not too bad on this particular vehicle. We'll walk you through all those steps later so you can see how it's done and follow along. And if you don't mind tackling the more challenging install, you're going to get a much cleaner look because the cross tube is hidden behind that rear fascia, and the only thing you end up seeing is the receiver tube opening, just poking out below the bumper, so it's a very clean look. So again, if that's worth it to you, follow along and we'll show you how we got it installed. Starting off the installation, you're going to have a series of fasteners all along the underside of the vehicle that we want to remove so we can take the back fascia off. You're going to have a couple Phillips head screws, which are going to be easiest with a bit driver since they're going to be in the wheel well here. There's going to be a singular 10mm bolt that's kind of to the inside edge next to that mud flap, and then push pin fasteners all along the outer border of this panel. We'll take that bit driver, kind of tuck it in there, and work these screws out as best we can with the limited space. Now just to the inside edge of that mud flap is where our 10mm bolt will be. So we'll just reach up in there and get that off. And all of these push pin fasteners will do last. So we'll start on the edge, prying out that middle section. And once that middle section is out, we can go to the base and pop it out. So if this doesn't go quite as smoothly, you might just need to pull that middle section out more. That first one on the edge will be the last thing holding your mud flap in place, so just set that to the side somewhere safe and continue around the border of the fascia for the rest of these push pin fasteners. This panel here on the driver's side should actually be loose, so I'll do my best to just kind of pry this out of there. And again, just set this to the side. These two push pins over by the exhaust can be ignored because all they're doing is holding this small plastic panel on and it's not connected to anything. So keeping those on isn't going to bother anything. Just need to turn our attention to the remaining middle pins. There's two more Phillips head screws inside the wheel well here that are located above where that mud flap was, so you can get those removed now too.
Finally, we'll open up the back hatch, and just underneath your taillight, there's going to be 2 more screws. You can remove those with a 5mm Allen. Now, again, just kind of like before, if your car is older, you might find that they're a bit stuck, so just break them loose carefully and pop them out the rest of the way. And the final thing we want to do before removing this whole fascia is just a bit of a protective step. Lay down some painter's tape on either side of this seam right here. That way, when we remove this fascia, if this corner maybe comes in contact with the paint here, we're not going to scratch it because we have this protective layer. It's not required, but it's something we like to do here just to protect the vehicle. For this part, you'll want an extra set of hands. Joe's helping us on the other side, just making sure that we've got a good hold on the fascia. But what you want to do is go over to the wheel well, kind of get your fingers underneath the lip of the fascia and just pull straight towards you. There's going to be a series of clips along the top that will start to release. And we can work our way to the center, where eventually we can disconnect this from the main bumper, and if there's wiring connectors, disconnect them. If not, just set it to the side. If you do have one of those connectors, here's where it would be on the driver's side of the vehicle, just below the taillight. So again, just make sure you watch for that when you're removing the fascia and don't just pull straight out. Watch for that connector so you can disconnect it safely. I'm going to give ourselves a little bit more room to work by just lowering the exhaust. Just at this location here, we're going to spray down this isolator with some soapy water. Grabbed it here and just started tugging until it started to get released off that stud and I could flip it around. It'll be a lot easier to pop this back on later. And one more extra step before we lift our hitch. Much like we saw with the push pin fasteners earlier, you might have some weld nuts that are a bit dirty. And that's okay. Just take some penetrating oil and a tube brush and clean them out. You'll have 2 towards the rear of the vehicle, and then you'll have one that's a little bit more towards where that mud flap used to be. And it'll be the same on both sides. On the passenger side, though, you're going to have that exhaust kind of in the way, but that's why we removed that isolator, to make it a bit easier for us to reach. I'm just going to test the hardware by hand to see if it goes in smoothly. If it does, then you're in business, you can carry on. If it doesn't, you might grab a hand socket and ratchet and maybe just a bit more of that penetrating oil to help work it in and just clean those threads out a bit more. But if everything threads in by hand just fine, then grab an extra set of hands and get ready to lift that hitch up. Just taking care to push it over the exhaust. We've got a strap kind of holding it in place right now. And take some of your hardware and just loosely thread it in by hand so the hitch will support itself. You'll see we're using one of our M12 bolts with conical tooth washer, having those teeth face up. And with that in by hand on both sides, you can let go. Once those are all loosely in place, we can come back through with a 19mm or 3/4 inch socket and zip those up. We can then come back through, torque all the hardware down to the specifications found in your instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench at home, you can find one here at eTrailer, or you can typically check one out or rent one from a local auto parts store. And just repeat that for all the remaining hardware. With the hitch in place, all we need to do now is trim up a few of these plastic pieces. So we'll start with the opening for the actual receiver tube. Find your center using something like these holes for the push pin fasteners or the ridges right next to them as a point of reference to find that center. And then you want to mark out a hole that's going to be 5.5 inches wide, 3.5 inches tall, and make sure it's just, again, centered up. And once you're done with that, you can grab a pair of snips or maybe something like a rotary tool to cut that out. I come back through with something like a file or a razor knife and just try to clean up those edges.
so you don't have any plastic burrs. And on the panel that was only on our driver's side here, we're going to make a mark from the end 10 inches up. So if we kind of recall the orientation of this slot right here was where that singular 10mm bolt was when we removed our fascia. So that should help kind of determine the direction here. And I'm just going to go all the way up until this edge right here, going no further than 10 inches past here. So this section is what's going to get trimmed. Now we can start to just button things up. So remember to put that rubber isolator back in place for your exhaust hanger. After the bumpers clicked back into place, everything should be lined up perfectly well. Our hitch is poking out and lining up with the hole we cut. If it's not for whatever reason and your fascia isn't going back on, that's when you would take it off and make some adjustments. So maybe you just didn't cut wide enough the first time and you just need to enlarge it. That's okay. I always advise just starting small and working your way up from there so you only trim what you need. With everything buttoned up and back in place, that'll complete our look at and installation of the Curt Class 3 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2018 Honda Odyssey. Thanks for watching.